Next keynote will be delivered by Dr. Kiong, lead for Urban and Green Tech Office at the Agency for Science, Technology and Research. The title of his keynote is Advancing Urban and Green Technology at A*STAR. Dr. Ng.
Very good morning, Deputy President, Prof. Lee, Prof. Shi, research colleagues, industry, government agencies. It's a great privilege. Thank you very much for inviting me to give this session. I just want to double check that my screen is sharing a very exciting development in this energy space, and also sharing the opportunities that research community can work with you together to deliver solution for these challenges. Secretary, I'll just continue. I think we're going to share about the 4 switches in the energy space, and also share about the different solutions that are being developed. So I think for us, we can see that this R&D and innovation is very, very important to tackle these national challenges. And Singapore as a city-state has always risen to these challenges. For example, Singapore was land scarce, now still land scarce, but 20% of our land is now reclaimed land. It's only possible through science and tech. And similarly, water, I think it's a critical national challenge. And then with the 4 taps in place, new water, desalinated water, I think the tech solutions have become very, very important to solve these natural challenges. And now we have the climate as a challenge, energy as a challenge. Just checking with the Secretary again. Are you able to move to the next slide? Thank you. Maybe the next one. So I think it's a great privilege to tell you more about our urban and green tech efforts in A*STAR as a horizontal tech office. So our UGT in short is really a new setup about 2 years ago. So in tackling very complex challenges, wicked problems, then in A*STAR, we understand that we need to pull together resources and pull together expertise from different disciplines, so that we can then focus on key national challenges and address them. So you can see the vision is really, how do we bring together different research entities within A*STAR, from the bio side to the science engineering side to the computing side, so that we can focus our attention to solve urban green tech problems. At the same time, looking for partners like yourself across the whole ecosystem to work together. So what we offer from the Green Tech Office is really to the whole ecosystem that you need A*STAR, you need certain expertise. We would like to be the focal point. Of course, if you know the research institute directly, you can contact them, but you want some expertise, but you're not sure who to look for. Welcome, look for us, look for me, send me an email. So we like to be your catalyst. We like to connect for you, open doors for you, so that we can work together as a whole of A*STAR with the universities, with the agencies, with the industries. And from our Green Tech Office, we are also want to focus on niche areas. I think there are many strengths across the whole ecosystems. There are many strengths at the universities, industries, and where you have strengths and where you lead, we want to support you to make you more successful. And there also are some areas where we have traditional strengths in research, and that's where we have to lean on you to help us to then give us your support, so that we can then deliver these challenges. And some of the strengths that we have would include those that traditionally A*STAR has built up in the manufacturing, trade, and connectivity space. I think there's always been a lot of work in applying and translating R&D to the different industry sectors, whether it's electronics, microelectronics, whether it's chemicals, whether it's energy, and so on. So we hope to use some of this knowledge learned to that support colleagues in the ecosystem to deliver this challenge. Next, please. As in the very inspiring opening from Prof. Chen, I think brings the synergy out of different expertise is very important. In A*STAR, just an example, so from the bottom left-hand corner, so where we have some good research in advanced materials, then we also need the help of another expertise like the chemical and engineering sciences, where I come from, to do scale up, how to increase the manufacturing scale, how to translate it. At the same time, I think all this is very much aided by, as we know, digital twinning. How do we do less experiments and get more results? Or how do we sharpen the next level of experiments by using machine learning, AI, and so on. So that's where the supercomputers will come in to help us, to guide us. And the bottom right-hand corner is, I think, a very important discipline for us. And that's where we look at overall, what's the impact? What's the impact on energy? What's the impact on recycling? What's the impact on the cost? And how do we ensure that the work that we do achieve the impact on multiple fronts? Because for today's problems, a single solution not necessarily will be able to address. We may need multiple solutions to have overall impact. So I also encourage colleagues to come and share with us what other expertise could we work together with you. Next, please. And in terms of translation strategy, I think that's where I've mentioned several times, working together comes, where Singapore is really very determined to tackle this energy challenge. And that's where the agencies will set the national plan, where the agency will tell us what's a zero waste master plan, for example, what's the emission targets. And with these big problem statements for Singapore, and that's where we bring together colleagues from IHLs, universities, polytechnics, and bring together the industries, whether it's a SME, multinational, localized enterprise, spin-offs, and together we sometimes also do operational technology road mapping. So how do we plan ahead, 5 years, 10 years down the road? What are the important gaps that we need to fulfill? Then that's how we want to put up proposals to then bridge such gaps, leading to solutions for national challenges. And sometimes these solutions in ASA, we often see that we can also use such solution into other sectors. So having developed research, having developed technology capabilities, very often we also benefit other sectors as well. And of course, ultimately, for the economic benefit, there can also be opportunity for technology export. But to achieve that, we really need your support. We need to work together with you. Next, please. Really, at this point, I'd just like to introduce some of the examples of projects that we work on in A-Star. And these projects are by no means done by A-Star. It's always work together with collaborators, colleagues like yourself. I think many of you would know. So for instance, in the 4 pillars, the first pillar, the smart, efficient urban systems, urban planning tools, is working with agencies like HDB together. And in terms of sustainable building materials, also working with different research colleagues together in the universities. For example, to respond for cool Singapore, how do we have coatings to be able to reduce the indoor room temperature? So it's not done by A-Star alone, but through collaborations, multidisciplinary, multiple partners. And the second pillar, circular economy, maybe I'll just highlight an example later. And the third one, energy efficiency and systems, is also very close collaboration with NUS NTU. For instance, on looking to energy storage systems, because as we know, for example, battery materials tend to be heavy. How do we incorporate that into structures to then have 2-in-1 purposes? And also in terms of energy modeling, there's also been working with colleagues together from university. And the fourth pillar, low carbon future, I think this is where I think a lot of us are very, very keen, very, very interested. So later I'll give an example of looking at how we want to plan ahead to do translation so that we can then prove our technologies, bring it to the working level at a larger scale. And enough for us to be finding solutions that can be translated, adopted. And the last 3 horizontal is very, very important. As mentioned already, modeling, simulation, digital really help us to speed up the pace of work, digital twinning, and life cycle assessment, life cycle costing, TEA. I think this is crucial because if it doesn't make economic sense, then it doesn't make impact sense, then we just cannot take it further in terms of PRL. Next, please. I just illustrate a few examples of work from our research institutes as well as a collaboration with the larger community. For instance, plastic waste is always a challenge to our zero waste master plan. So how do we then improve the recycling, upcycling? So that's where we look at different parts of the value chain, starting from all the way, what do we do with our plastic today? And do we incinerate? Do we landfill? How do we recycle them? Looking into the social aspects as well, you can see the first blue bubble, the development of smart waste bin. So can we automate the process of sorting waste? In fact, how do we develop good habits, in terms of handling plastic waste and so on? Because I think many of you have been in, from other countries as well. You know that certain countries actually they form very good green habits in terms of recycling that, and how do we tackle that? And then how do we treat the plastic? For example, will be through waste pyrolysis, converting them to useful fuels again. And how do we handle very complicated plastic waste like multi-layers? That again, this also work with NEA together. So how do we then recycle multi-layer different material packaging and reuse the materials that we can get out of it for sustainable production? And in the area of low carbon, very high interest from A-Star is this was an example where we're looking at how do we capture carbon at the same time tackle other national imperatives. And one of the key challenges in Singapore is how do we extend Semakau landfill? Because Semakau landfill beyond 2035 is very important. So one way might be we take some of the materials for landfill like incinerator bottom ash, and then we can put together with CO2, so two waste material, and then we can reduce the landfill, make into useful products that can be potentially require alternative sand used for land reclamation, construction, and so on. Also reducing our import of sand over time. So it's really a 3-in-1 potential solutions. Next, please. And this slide just show how a future view might be based on the technology of using the waste IBA, CO2, recycled concrete aggregates from buildings, and how do we form a circular way of handling the waste material. Next, please. And with all good technology, good research, I think we are very, very strong in Singapore, very, very blessed with that, having this very strong fundamental applied research. But key challenge is always how do we demonstrate at larger scale? The challenge lies in also the lack of test bed sometimes, and also high cost is high risk, because very often at the end client end adopter always wants, can you demonstrate it successfully before I adopt it? Because there's always some risk that I need to address. So next, please. Then this is just a traditional pathway in chemical scaling up. So we start from the milligram, gram in the lab, then we go to the kilogram scale up to a ton for demo, and then to industry adoption. Typically, it takes 8 to 10 years. And the middle part is very crucial, because without the middle parts, very often companies are not willing to take on the risk, or even very, very good technology, very exciting technology, a lot of potential impact. So, but if let's say for every tech, we need to do translation, then we have to do many, many translation steps. So in A-Star, we are thinking about the next slide, please. How could we potentially have one translational test bed for many different technology leads, many different processes, many different chemistry? So to do that, to have a test bed that can work for many different technology, then we really have to think about modular concept. This is something that's very new and very, very unique. It's not established yet in the world, where it's called a potential plug and play modular test bed. So that's where different modules, whether it's capture, whether it's utilization, then whether it's a separation, whether it's purification, all the different modules, I'll put it simply like Lego blocks that we can assemble, disassemble. This will ensure that we are able to quickly do translation, testing, test bed, putting them together, and then when there's a next chemistry to be tested, a next technology to be tested, we can reuse some of these modules. And by doing so, we can speed up this translation step and hopefully also reduce a lot of capex, because some of the modules can simply be reused. Next, please. And this is my last slide. So I just want to touch on undergirded all these activities, really strengths in the life cycle assessment, life cycle costing, because it will then define whether we are successful, not successful, and also help us to sharpen our research to ensure that all the efforts, all the energy, all the thinking that goes in results in something that we all are sure of at the end of the day. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry for the glitches in the slides.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ng. So before we proceed with the Q&A, I would like to announce that the Agency for Science, Technology and Research, A-Star, has joined SGC as a research performer, further enhancing our center's capability on energy transition innovations with broader access to the best-in-class talent pool and research infrastructure, as I think highlighted by the Dr. Ng's keynote presentation. So this addition will definitely amplify our Singapore R&D ecosystem collaborative efforts towards developing clean energy technology for sustainable development of the country, the region, as well as the world. So with that, I think we have time probably for maybe 2 questions before we move on to the next keynote presentation. Let me actually read out the first 2 questions. The first is, what is the TRL for waste pyrolysis?
For waste pyrolysis, I think this is not my own area of technology, but I'll say that it is still before the demonstration stage. There is we still need a step to do test bedding before it goes up.
Okay, so I think the next question is, life cycle assessment are beginning to include impacts beyond greenhouse gas emissions, such as water, human health, and biodiversity. Are there certain impacts beyond carbon that are being considered? And is there any work to understanding how all environmental and human health impacts may be considered?
I think, thank you for this question. It's always very challenging to consider the different impact on certain things that we do. So very often what we do is first we define what is the so-called the exam question before we start the process, to be sure that we focus on exam questions, because the other important small, maybe less random question for the need of a certain proposal, a certain project, then we always consider probably put in the car park first, but look at the main question to address them first. After addressing the main one, then we look at the other questions to see whether they do have a risk, and if they do have a risk, that it might even be fitted back to an additional exam question to be answered. So typically, that's, again, I'm not expert in this field, and you want deeper question, very welcome. Then I'll connect to our expert in the field. Just drop me an email. I appreciate the question.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Ng. So